Welcome to tonight's live stream. I'm going to get started in a minute. I just need to let everybody on social media know the live stream is going on, and then we'll get started. Tonight's live stream is one I have been wanting to do for some time, and it relates to things I have heard from people in the goth subculture. And I thought that it was time to finally do this live stream because the issue of Simpin is one that I am an expert on, and it's one I have written several books on as related to my men's issues with the book Stop Simpin, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance, and books like Stop Simpin in the Workplace, along with books like The Misadventures of Captain Save-A-Ho. And many guys in the goth scene, they have picked up my books like Stop Simpin. And after hearing from some of the women in the scene, like Angela Benedict last week when she did a live stream, I thought it was time to finally do this subject called Simpin in the goth subculture. Now, in order for people to really understand what simping is, I need to break down what the definition of simping is before I get really into the meat of the topic. Now, simping, the definition of a simp is a man that puts himself in a subservient and submissive position under women in hopes of winning them over without the woman bringing anything to the table. The second definition is a man who puts too much value on women for no reason. The third definition is a man who prides himself with chivalry in the hopes of getting sexual gratification from women, or a man who remains in a relationship with a woman even if she is unfaithful to him. And a man who is so desperate for female attention and or a relationship that that he will endure verbal and physical abuse and even a woman cheating on him just to keep her and be in a relationship. And those are the definitions of a simp. And in a place like the goth subculture, men are extremely vulnerable to simping. And the reason why a lot of men in the goth subculture are very vulnerable to simping is because the goth subculture has a lot of guys in the scene who are introverts. And when you have a group of men who are introverts together, they really don't have strong social skills because they have not really learned the male life skills to know how to have a relationship with a woman, or in some cases, even know how to conduct themselves with a woman. And because many of these men are out here who are simps, they don't really know how to navigate a social interaction with a woman. And oftentimes, an introvert, what he will do is he will create a fantasy image around a woman and he won't see the real person. And in a place like the goth subculture, oftentimes a lot of guys who are introverts, they get caught up in the aesthetic beauty of a woman, and because they get caught up in the aesthetic beauty of a woman, it makes it very hard for them to see the real person that they're involved with. So when you have a very introverted guy, he oftentimes just is not really have that understanding on how to conduct himself in a social interaction with a woman, and he oftentimes doesn't really have enough knowledge to understand how to have a conversation with a woman, or even knows how to even again carry and conduct himself with a woman, because he's, as an introvert, he's very awkward and he's struggling with things. So that makes him more vulnerable than other men out here to be the target of female predators. And that's one of the things in the scene that really a lot of guys don't notice too much, but I know about it and I've seen it. When it comes down to guys who are introverts, because I was an introvert myself and I'm still struggling with it, so I know that it can make you a target for female predators, because you a lot of times don't have much experience in talking to women, and some of these guys oftentimes put women on pedestals and they see them as bigger than they are, and in some cases they get intimidated. And again, when you get intimidated by women, it makes you radiate energy that really makes you a target for female predators. So this is something that a lot of guys in the scene, they're not really aware of that they're doing, but it is something that they need to become more aware of. Because one of the things when you're an introvert is that because you have a lot of anxiety and you're keyed up, you become very emotional. And that makes it where you're not thinking objectively about people, especially people that you have feelings for. And that's one of the other things that is a major problem for a lot of guys in the scene, is that they are very caught up in their emotions about women, and that's what leads to them getting into trouble and becoming a target of female predators. And when you have women out here who they see a guy like that, they see him not as a person they want to have a relationship with, but they see him as someone they want to take advantage of. I'm going to take a minute to check out the chats. T800, glad to see you here. Trex Manifest, glad to see you here. Glad to see you here, Cherie. Glad to see you here. Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, Trex Manifest, Chinese Letters. Hi, how you doing? I'm going to get back into this with simping in the goth subculture, because this is something that the guys in the scene need to know about, because this is information that can possibly save you a lot of grief, and it can possibly even save your life, because simping is something, again, that it leads to you becoming a target of female predators. And the only way to break out of the simp paradigm is to educate yourself, because when you educate yourself and learn more about how to carry and conduct yourself in interactions with women, this is how you learn how to identify female predators before they can go out here and take advantage of you. And I've heard some horror stories from people who have dealt with female predators in the subculture. I heard from one guy about a year ago. He told me that he had a goth girlfriend who had used him and took advantage of him, and he was trying to warn me about it. Then I heard from another guy who had bought one of my books. He was telling me about these simps out here, and I understood what was going on, because when you have a scene filled with guys who struggle with things like introversion, like shyness, and social anxiety, they aren't really understanding where they're making mistakes as related to dating and relationships. And because they're not understanding where they're making these mistakes, because nobody, they're afraid to go out and seek this information, this is how they become targeted by your female predators out here, women who will wear a goth aesthetic but do not have the best intentions for a relationship with a guy. And most of the women in the subculture who I have talked to online and have watched their videos, a lot of these ladies are great ladies. However, we have a small contingent of women out here who, just like the women in the regular world, they are looking for guys to take advantage of, and they're looking for guys to go out here and use so they can get from point A to point B. So, what they want to do is find a young, naive, and inexperienced guy, and they want to be able to string him along in the quest to get whatever resources they can get out of that guy, whether it be money, whether it be clothes, whether it be cars, whether it be even being taken care of for a while. That's what they want to use the simp for. And the simp, he wants to get a relationship with a woman, not understanding what woman he's getting involved with and why she is importantly saying yes to him. Because oftentimes, what happens with a lot of guys who are simping, what they do is they look for an easy way to a relationship, and oftentimes they will agree to get in a relationship with any woman that says yes without asking the critical question of why this person is saying yes to them, and why does this person want to speed things along when you've just met them. And this is another thing that the simp isn't really looking at, because he's so caught up in getting attention from women that he's not thinking about who's paying attention to him and why they're paying attention to him. And because he's so eager to get the attention of a woman, especially a woman he likes, he never takes the time to sit down and ask critical questions about this woman, or ask her critical questions, or take the time to actually sit down with this woman and really take an objective look at this woman that he's getting involved with, because he's so caught up in his emotions about getting attention from women that he's not thinking about those critical things. And this is one of the things introverts do. We get so keyed up in our emotions just because a woman is paying attention to us that we don't really take an objective and critical look at who is talking to us and ask why they are talking to us, or even try to take a minute to really assess what this woman's motivations are, or to take a minute to try to take some control as related to the attention they're receiving, and really assess whether this person is really interested. And because this guy is so caught up in his emotions, oftentimes what he does is he starts agreeing to do things on the woman's terms, and that leads to her gaining leverage and control over the relationship, and then in some cases getting control over him. And this is where the simps wind up getting really taken advantage by the female predators out here, because the female predators, what they do is they want to get control early on, and they know that an introverted guy, he just wants attention from a woman, and he wants to have a girlfriend so bad that he's not thinking about the core elements of a relationship or the possible start of a relationship. All he's in some cases thinking about is this woman is paying attention to me, and there might be the possibility of sex if I go out here and do everything to agree with this woman and do everything that she wants me to do. And that's what really gets the simp in trouble, is he's so agreeable to whatever the woman wants, that he never really sees what is related to her values and her character. A lot of times, because your introverts, like every other man out here, is visual, he's so caught up in the woman's looks that he's not looking for at her internal traits, like her character and her internal traits as related to who she is. And this is what gets a lot of these guys in trouble later on in the relationship, because they're looking to have a relationship with someone who looks a certain way, but never really takes that critical examination of that person's values again, their character, or the reasons that motivate them to have a relationship with them. And this is where they get into trouble again. But these guys, they really need an education in how to go out here and have relationships with women, and they need somebody to really show them how to do things. And a lot of times, a lot of these guys don't have fathers to teach them, and they don't have older brothers or other men, so they're trying to learn things on their own, and they're just caught up in their feelings. And because they're caught up in their feelings, they wind up not being able to assess things effectively. Now, the way a guy is supposed to go out here and really talk to women is he has to learn how to, again, and learn how to do things like study the woman when he's talking to her. He's got to learn to make eye contact. And then after he makes eye contact, he has to study the woman's body language, study the things that she's doing as they're talking. And he also has to feel for the vibes that are going on between them, because everybody has this spiritual energy, and oftentimes you get a sense of whether a person is interested based on their energy, one, and then two, by their body language. But because these introverted guys, they're so caught up in their feelings, they're not really assessing that, and they're just so emotional about the attention they're receiving. They're not thinking about these things at all, and they're not really taking a minute to really think about whether this person is showing interest. And because they're not sitting there thinking about whether they're showing interest, all they're thinking about is with the attention they're getting. And again, a lot of guys in the subculture, this is what makes them very vulnerable to female predators, is that they're just caught up in the attention they're receiving. And this is something you have to learn how to navigate through your emotions on, because yes, you can feel about things, but then you have to start taking a minute to stop feeling, and you have to take a minute to start thinking. Great to see you here, Rob IS and Luciano. I'm glad to see you here talking about simping in the goth subculture. And a lot of guys in the subculture, as I've been told, they have been caught up with this simping. And this is a group of guys who are extremely vulnerable to female predators, because they haven't been understanding, how to do things. Because when you're an introvert, you are inside of yourself, and you are not really thinking about things as related to the outside of people. And a lot of times you're awkward and struggling. Sometimes you are very anxious around women because you're not used to getting attention from women. So it's a major issue that a lot of guys in the scene are struggling with. And it's something that, again, a lot of guys, they just need to get a little bit of education on. Rob IS, what are your questions? I'll be glad to answer them. But well, what happened in the last 10 years is we had a lot of guys who grew up in homes without fathers. Now, in the early days, you had a lot of guys who grew up with fathers, and those guys were able to teach those guys male life skills. But what's happening now in the last couple of years is we've got a major influx of guys coming into the scene who did not get male life skills. And because they didn't get male life skills, they are really going out into the world all by themselves, and some of them are going out here with these feminine life skills. And when you go out here on feminine life skills, you're approaching relationships the way a woman would, and not the way a man would. And a simp, what he does is he's looking for women to give him attention, and he's looking to get the approval of women. And when you do that, you're coming from a position of weakness. And when you come from a position of weakness, most women who are healthy, they are not going to really see you as someone they could consider for a relationship, because most women know from the first 5 seconds of looking at you whether they want to have a sexual relationship with you or a romantic relationship with you. And in most cases, if they are seeing certain things, they are not going to consider you, because they will look at you and with your slouched body language, your eyes to the floor, and no sense of confidence, and it's going to tell you them that you are weak in some way. And because you are appearing weak, they're not going to see you as a partner. And again, introverts by nature, they oftentimes are slouching, they don't make much eye contact, and oftentimes, again, these are signs to female predators that a man is somebody they could see as a mark, and as a guy who they can see as someone they can take advantage of. So when they see a guy out here and he's out here with his eyes down and he's really talking low and he doesn't have a lot of confidence, they're going to see him as someone they can take advantage of. And they're going to come right in and start talking to that guy, telling him the things that he wants to hear. And then as they're telling him the things he wants to hear, then they wind up manipulating him later on into falling into a trap where he usually winds up getting fleeced for a whole bunch of money, or he winds up getting fleeced in other ways, or he winds up in a situation that's really dangerous where he's dealing with ex-boyfriends or other situations that he shouldn't be dealing with. And that's all because he's coming into the relationship as a follower, doing things on the woman's terms instead of doing things on his own terms. And this is a thing that introverts haven't learned about relationships, is that men out here, they have to show leadership early on, and they show leadership with the first meeting. Usually, yes, the woman will introduce herself, but with nonverbal cues like a smile or a look. And yes, that'll be a cue for you to come in and introduce yourself. Sometimes they'll actually ask you what your name is or bump into you. But again, this all to show interest in you. And that's for you to come in and holler at that woman and let her know that you're interested. And at that point, that's when you start trying to do things on your terms. Because once she shows interest and does something like give you her phone number, then you make one phone call, and if she's interested, she'll want to continue to engage with you. And then you find someplace like a Starbucks, and then she pays her way, you pay your way, and it's done in a public place. You find out what she's interested in, what she's about, what she's in, what type of relationship she wants to have with you. And that's what you do in the first meeting you have with this woman. And that's how you start your relationships. You usually don't, you start your relationships again with women in public places after you do get the first phone call or the first text. And that's where you go from there, one public place, again, like a Starbucks or a coffee shop. And that's where you go with things. But when you have a lot of guys who are simps, they think that they have to follow this Madison Avenue Hollywood idea about dating. And they think that because after a woman pays attention to them and they get her to say yes, that they have to go out here and impress her by taking her to this fancy restaurant and buying her this expensive dinner, or taking her to something like a very expensive concert and buying expensive concert tickets, or doing something that's really expensive. But you usually do not need a lot of money to go out here and have a great time with a woman. Usually, if a woman really likes you, she wants to spend time with you. And this is something that many introverts have to understand early on, is that a woman who wants to spend time with you will want to spend time with you. And time is the most important thing about relationships. And when you're an introvert, you're used to spending time by yourself. And it takes a lot out of you to spend time with someone else. And the whole thing is, you have to understand that time is precious and time is something you can't get back. So this is something a lot of guys in the scene really need to think about as related to dating, is they need to think about the time they are spending and the time who they are spending with, because life is too short in this world to spend it with someone who is going to be negative in your life. Life is too short to spend it with someone who is going to be a bane in your life, someone who is going to suck your life energy and suck your time. This is something you have to really think about when you're in relationships with people. And a lot of introverts, they're just so happy to have somebody pay attention to them that they're not thinking about who is paying attention to them, why they're paying attention to them, and why they deserve their time. And that's something they need to really think about when you're having a relationship, because that's something I learned to think about as I got older, because I saw as, yeah, you have to really think about who you're with and how much time you're spending with that person, because your time, again, is one of those intangibles that is too valuable to waste on someone who is negative, someone who is sucking the energy out of you, someone who is a pain to deal with, someone who is a chore to deal with, and someone who brings nothing but stress and drama to your life. And that's something that you don't deserve to deal with as a man. When you are a man, you have to understand that life, again, is way too short to waste it with someone who takes away from your life. You want to spend time with people who add to your life and people who make your life better. And that's something a lot of young guys in the scene who are so eager for a girlfriend, they are willing to just sit there and tolerate a woman just because they want a girlfriend, or they want a girlfriend who wears a certain aesthetic and has a certain style. But that's not the reason why you go out here and have a girlfriend. And that's another thing that introverts have a problem with, is understanding that you just don't have a girlfriend for the sake of peer pressure. You have a girlfriend because this woman wants to be in your life. She wants to be a part of your life. She wants to add to your life, and she wants to enrich your life. And a lot of simps, they don't really understand that, because they have gotten most of their ideas about relationships from Madison Avenue and Hollywood. And because they've gotten most of their ideas about relationships from Madison Avenue and Hollywood, they really have a distorted picture about how relationships work. So they're looking for ideals as related to women. And when you're looking for ideals, you don't see real people. So they come into the whole approach to relationships from the wrong way. And again, this is why they become targeted by female predators, because they're looking for women who are of a certain look, a certain aesthetic, a certain personality, and they're looking for things on the surface, and they're not looking for things as related to the internals, as related to values and character. And that's something that, again, guys in the scene have to really take a moment to assess, because if you take a moment to assess this, then you won't be taken advantage of by a female predator. Now, most guys out here, they think, who are simps, think they have to submit to the woman in the relationship. They think they have to defer to the woman in the relationship. And they think if they go out here and are submissive, they will be able to increase their chances of getting a sexual relationship with the woman. And any girl you were out here dating and you try to submit to her like that, again, is coming from a position of weakness, and it shows her that you are not a man that she should respect. Now, most guys, they think that if they submit, that this will actually win her favor and approval, but you have to have a backbone and some testicles and stand up for yourself. And a lot of guys who are introverts, they're afraid to do this because they're afraid that they will lose the opportunity to have a relationship with a woman, but you will still get that opportunity to have a relationship with that woman, because if she loves you, she will respect your decision to stand up to her. And what a lot of guys who are introverts, they don't understand is women aren't fragile, and they can take constructive criticism. They can take it when you disagree with them, and they can take it when you say no to them. So you have to go out here in the relationship knowing that you have a right to things in the relationship. And relationships are about two people, and it's about give and take. So it's about two people being in this relationship and them sharing, and more importantly, them working together to cooperate with each other. So a lot of these introverted guys, they're afraid to stand up for themselves because they fear that if they say something that the woman disagrees with, what'll happen is she won't want to have a relationship with them, and that is not true at all. If a woman truly cares about you and wants to have a relationship with you, she will not mind you disagreeing with her, and she won't even mind it if you say no to her, because that shows that you see value in yourself. That shows you have a backbone, and that shows that you want something in the relationship too, and it's not all about her, because most women out here, they don't want the burden of having to make all of the decisions. They don't want the responsibility for everything. And it's overwhelming for a lot of women out there when they have to deal with women who it's overwhelming for them, because they have to deal with a guy who won't make any decisions or stand up for himself, and it's frustrating to deal with that kind of guy. And it's very stressful to be in a relationship with that kind of guy, because when you're dealing with that kind of guy, it's just a chore, because he won't make any decisions, he won't take any lead in the relationship, and he's a complete pushover. And being a pushover, this is one of the things that really hurts an introvert in relationships, because when you are a yes man, then what happens is, instead of a woman learning to love you, then she just learns to become indifferent to you, or in some cases, she learns not to respect you at all. And respect is paramount in building a relationship with a woman, because when a woman respects a man, she sees him on the same level as herself. And instead of her looking up at you from the pedestal like most introverts do, because they often put women on pedestals, you're looking her dead in the eye, because you're both on the same level. And when you have respect, that's when you can start laying a foundation towards love. And that's when you can start building a closer relationship with each other. And this is something guys have to understand about relationships, is that unless you have respect, you don't really have anything. And when you're going out here to pursue relationships with women, the first thing you're looking for is the intangible of respect. And respect is something people earn, and it's something that you just don't give away like a lot of introverted guys do and a lot of simps do. They give away their respect because they're so caught up in their feelings that they wind up being someone who winds up losing in the end because they're looking for a woman to like them, not understanding like is an emotion and like is something that's temporary, but respect is something that once you earn it, it's something that you're going to have for a long time because like is something that a lot of guys have been taught to believe over the last 50 years is a good thing, but like is something that is arbitrary because like is something that people they want based on superficial things, but it can come, it can go. But once you have respect, that means both of you see each other on the same level. And it says that both of you are going to set boundaries for your relationship. You're going to set standards for your relationship. And you're going to set a code of conduct where both of you are going to treat each other in the same way because you see this person just like you see yourself, and you're going to love this person in the same way you love yourself. And the reason why you're going to do that is because when there's respect, yes, you may disagree with each other, but there's a line in the sand that you're not going to cross with each other because when you love and respect someone, you're not going to go and do things to hurt that other person. And that's something guys have to learn about relationships. Because if you when you once you learn about love and respect, it's something that'll allow you to build a relationship with a woman that'll allow it to grow. And I go in depth on that subject in my ebook and paperback, Stop Simpin, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. And that book is available in paperback on Amazon.com, and it's also available on Smashwords for $2.99. And every guy in the scene, they really need to go pick up Stop Simpin because it's a book that I wrote for a lot of guys out there that so they could learn the basics regarding relationships and learn the basics for a healthy relationship with women. And I just believe after I've heard so many horror stories about guys who have been taken advantage of, that they could benefit from reading Stop Simping because simping is not something good. It's not how you build a healthy relationship with a woman. It is not a good thing to do because your relationship, when you start it with a woman, is based on very superficial things, and your relationship isn't based on substance. So when you are out here simping, what you're doing is you're not really having a good balanced relationship with a woman. You're being in a relationship that's not going to be of anything of substance, and the whole thing is going to fall apart. And I've seen so many great relationships between people in the scene in many of their videos, and it's clear to me that the simping that I'm seeing and I'm hearing about, you know, I'm hoping that it's just a small group that's coming up because I've seen so many great couples and stuff, marriages and families, and that's one part of the scene I like seeing. And if I could help other guys out here get over their introversion and their social anxiety so that they can have a great relationship, I'm hoping books like Stop Simping will be able to help them. Now, on the subject of simping, again, it's guys who think that again they have to submit and defer to women, and it's also a lot of guys who think that they have to tolerate, being abused in relationships in order to have a girlfriend, and that's something a lot of guys need to get an understanding about. Is you don't need to tolerate any sort of abuse in order to have a girlfriend. You don't need to tolerate any sort of verbal abuse, any sort of physical abuse, any sort of cheating, or any sort of disrespect in order to have a relationship, and that you have a right to be treated well in a relationship. Because if you're going to go out here and treat a woman right, then she should be willing to treat you right. And I've seen a couple of things in the scene where women have not been really respectful to a guy here and there, and they have had guys on the side on them, and I didn't think that that was right, but it happens. So, and but it's because the guys didn't know how to stand up for themselves. And again, an introvert, oftentimes they don't want to stand up for themselves out of fear that if they stand up for themselves, they will lose their girlfriend. But what the introvert has to understand is that you are losing right now. And what you're losing right now relates to your intangibles of manhood. Because as a man, when you are getting involved with a woman who does not respect you, what you're doing is you are losing intangibles as related to your manhood, such as your dignity, your self respect, your self worth. And these things are dragging you down, and they are taking away from your quality of life. Because when you sit there and tolerate being in a bad relationship, you are really literally in something that is destroying you. And guys need to understand that sometimes it's better to let a woman go than go out here and be in a relationship with someone who is sucking the life out of you. And that another thing, a lot of guys in the scene, especially introverts who think that this one woman is the only one, they need to understand that there are more women than men out here, and there are opportunities to be with women out here everywhere, and you shouldn't settle for a toxic relationship with a woman just because she has a certain aesthetic or because she's paying attention to you. You should be out here in a relationship with someone who is going to add to your quality of life, and someone who wants to be in your life. And every second of your life you spend with a toxic woman is time out of your life you could have for a better relationship with someone else. But you just have to have the self-confidence to go out here and pursue that relationship with someone else, or make yourself available to someone else. But what happens with many introverted guys is that they're afraid to lose what they have in order to gain something better. But in order to gain, you have to lose, and you have to be willing to lose in order to move forward. And this is something guys in the scene have to understand, is sometimes it's better to lose a bad woman in order to get involved with a woman who will be open to loving you. But you have to be willing to let go of a toxic female predator to go out here and pursue a relationship with a healthy woman who wants to have and build a relationship with you. Okay, I'm gonna answer a couple of questions. Rob, let me see what. Okay, I have watched 33 Secrets videos, but he makes a lot of statements that aren't really good. So, why are betas such jerks? Well, when it comes down to the beta, he often wants power in a relationship because he doesn't have power over himself. So he tries to take control by being a jerk and a bully to Luciano. And that's why betas are such bullies. But oftentimes they're paper tigers. And if you just stand up to them, what happens? They wind up falling apart. Why did dating become trendy and idealized in the last 2 or 3 decades? That's because Madison Avenue and Hollywood put ideas out there about what people should do on dates, but that's something that you can walk away from and go your own way on. And a lot of guys, they need to start going their own way, because you do not need to take women out to expensive events. You don't need to go out here and take them to expensive dinners or take them to expensive places. And this type of stuff that you're trying to do that you think is going to leave a first impression on women, what it's going to do is, again, make you a target for female predators. Because if a woman really wants to spend time with you, she'll spend time with you in a Starbucks and be happy there. And she'll be happy wanting to be in your company. And that's what it should be the most important thing. And guys out here need to understand that you don't need to spend money to get involved with women. Women who want to be with you will want to be with you. And they will want to be with you because they like you as a person and not what stuff you have. And this is one of the things that a lot of simps don't get. They go out here, they think that they need money to get women, and they think that they need to use money to get the attention of women. And some guys out there, in order to make that impression on her, they try to go out here and they use gimmicks like changing their aesthetic, or they try to go out here and they try to buy expensive clothes to get their attention. And these are what they call, in a book I read, Dr. Robert Glover's No More Mr. Nice Guy, attachments. And what they do is they try to use the attachments to get women's attention. But in most cases, they don't get the attention of great women. What they do is get the attention of female predators, because when you're out here and you are wearing expensive clothes, you are sending out a bait to those women, that, along with your weak body language, that says, this is a sucker that I can take advantage of, and this is someone who I can use to get what I want out of them, because this guy, he's looking like he's got weak body language. And then as they go talk to him, they see that he's very naive. And when they see a lot of his naivete, what happens is they take advantage of that guy, and then they get stuff out of him. And in a lot of cases, what happens to these guys is it's not really pretty. Either they get cheated on by the woman they're involved with, or what happens is they wind up getting fleeced for a lot of money. And it usually leaves these guys very angry, very bitter. And if there's no male intervention, what happens is they wind up becoming very angry, very bitter. And some guys become misogynists and they start hating women, when in actuality, they just didn't get a good education as a man on how to take a minute to, again, assess women and vet women. Because when you're talking to women, you have to take a minute to vet women. And vetting women means you sit down and you listen objectively to what she's saying. You think critically about what she's saying, and then you think about what she's doing, because her body language is going to tell a story of whether she is interested or not, whether she is engaged or not. And when you're an introvert, you're so nervous about how you're coming off that you're not thinking about what she's doing. And that's the thing you have to do, because her actions speak louder than her words. Because some women will say, oh, I really like you, I think you're cute and everything, but then you'll see the defensive body language, like the crossed arms or the crossed legs, and you'll see her sitting back like this and not sitting forward like what I'm doing right now. Because when you sit forward, it means you're engaged and you really want to sit down and be in the time, spend time with this person. But when you're sitting back, it's like, yeah, I'm not really interested in this guy. Or you see them doing things like they're being in their phone, it shows that they're not really into you. So when a woman is really into you, they are going to be very engaged. And when they really like you, they're going to be doing things like playing with their jewelry or playing with their hair or doing things like that. And these are signs that a lot of introverts, they have a hard time figuring out, because when you're inside yourself, you're just nervous and you're just trying to get through whatever things are doing, but it's just not really you being able to be aware of who you are. But what you have to do is you have to overcome your introversion and understand you come out of who you are in order to have relationships with people. And you have to overcome your fears about being with people, because part of being an introvert is it's primarily a fear of people and a fear of people hurting you. But what happens is, ironically, because the guys are nervous and anxious, they become hurt, and then they become far more introverted. And this is something that, again, happens, and it's sad to see. But if a guy got taught, and given guidance, they could come out of this introversion and really start to have healthy relationships with the opposite sex. And that's something that introverts, they have to learn how to do. It's something that a lot of guys haven't been able to learn how to do over the last 10 years, because a lot of guys, they grew up in single parent homes, and a lot of guys grew up in homes with helicopter parents. And the helicopter parents, they would go out of their way to protect their kids instead of letting them learn how to deal with certain situations so that they could develop better social skills. Because that's what happens to a lot of introverts, is that they are used to being at home, but when they go out into the real world, that's when they start having troubles. But they need guidance to get through that. I mean, when you're out here and you're going to places like a goth bar or a goth club or even a Starbucks, you really have to learn how to develop your social skills so that you can learn how to identify body language, different behaviors, and things that'll let you know things about people. And again, it's these things that will help you break out of this whole paradigm of simping, because the simp is a fit. A lot of guys, every guy has a simp phase when they first start out, but eventually they grow out of that phase as they become more educated and more self-aware of things in the dating scene. So what happens is, they may start out a simp, but eventually they learn how to identify the predators. They learn how to identify behaviors of predators, and they learn how to avoid predators. And also they learn how to start putting in work on how to study body language, social cues, and other personality traits. And it's these things that allow them to identify women who are interested in them, women who want to have relationships with them, and women who want to spend time with them. And because they've learned these things, they break out of the simp phase and they learn how to have a healthy relationship with a woman as a man. Um, yeah, Rob IS, Extreme Ghostbusters is a great show, and it was a great extension of Real Ghostbusters. It's one of my favorite shows, and it was one of the first shows to feature a positive portrayal of a goth with Kylie. I like Extreme Ghostbusters, um, and in the '90s, that was a great update on there. And yeah, there's a lot of simps in the goth subculture, and again, it comes from the nature of the kind of guys who are attracted to the scene. A lot of guys in the scene are introverts, and a lot of guys, they because they're introverts, they don't have much experience with women, and that's what leads to them being in a situation where they think that the woman has the lead. But in most cases, what women are actually looking for is a guy who is going to take the lead when they have a relationship with them. So again, once they throw out those nonverbal cues, they want to see the guy come in and take the lead, and they want to see the guy having some sort of backbone where he wants to pursue the relationship on his terms. They want to see what direction he's going to set for the relationship. So that's something women want to see from a guy. But when you have guys who are introverts and don't have much experience, and especially guys who come from single female-headed households, they are looking for the woman to lead. And again, female predators love leading in the relationship. They love being the dominant in the relationship because this is how they get power, and they get that power from guys who don't know much, but you can take your power back by learning why you shouldn't, learning what a simp is, learning the behaviors of a simp, and learning why the simp paradigm always ends in failure. And the main reason why the simp paradigm always ends in failure is primarily because the man is not someone the woman respects. And because the woman does not respect the man she is involved with, she does not love the man she is involved with. And with most simps, they think that because they're getting attention, they are getting love, but that's just attention. Love is something that when a man receives it is again about the woman respecting him, respecting the things that he wants to do, respecting the work he's trying to do, and respecting him and valuing him as a person. So a woman who respects a man, she is going to see value in him, and she's not going to want to do things to hurt him. Whereas a woman who does not respect a man, what she's going to do is she's just going to play along with a guy and give him the attention that will keep him engaged with her. And then after she's given him enough attention, she then goes out here and commits to other men outside of that man. And that's what I saw in several videos when I was doing research for the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, where a lot of guys thought that they were in a relationship with this woman, but I could look at the body language, and I remember in one video, and I saw where the woman really wasn't interested in the guy. She was talking about other guys, and she had another spare guy in the back. And a lot of women who have simps, what they do is they have what they call a side dude, and they keep the side dude along in case the relationship with the guy they're involved with doesn't work out. So what they do is they don't want to really have a commitment to that man, so they go out here and they have pen pal guys that they have on the internet. They have that guy around. They have another guy, probably some other place, and they have other guys. And once one relationship fails, they then go out here and go pursue relationships with that other guy. But the simp will never know because he's so caught up in his emotions about the attention he's receiving. And because he's receiving this attention, he's thinking that this woman is committing to him in a relationship, but she's not committing to him in a relationship. She's just having a place to stay just for the time being. And she's using the guy, so in some cases, again, for a place to stay, a place to get free meals, or a place to get free food. And then when some better guy comes along, she then gets involved with that other guy. Now they call that monkey branching, and that's the term that they use as related to it. And again, she's looking for a guy to use for resources. And sadly, the simp doesn't know that about the other guy until it's too late. And he sits there and he's sad about it, and sometimes he gets angry about it, but that's something he doesn't really understand because he's so, again, caught up in his feelings that he isn't really aware of what's going on. And he will go getting this attention for maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks, and he'll still think that there is a relationship, but there is not really that much of a relationship because he's thinking, because there's nothing there. I mean, there's no emotional connection, there's no spiritual connection. She's not really engaging him, but he's just thinking that he has to hold on to her because she's paying attention to him. And that's not really, again, a good relationship to be in. It's just going through the motions. And that's one of the things that's really sad about relationships between your simp and the women he gets involved with. It's a very hollow experience, and it's not one that really where people get close to each other. And usually, again, it ends very sadly because those guys don't really connect the way they're supposed to. I'm going to leave a link to my Cash App, and if you want to leave a donation, you can donate to the Cash App. You can also donate to the Patreon as well. And you can leave a donation to there. But again, we're talking about simps in the goth subculture. And sadly, I've been hearing again these horror stories about guys out here who have been taken advantage of by predators in the scene. And I understand where they're coming from because I myself am a guy who is dealing with shyness, a guy who is introverted, a guy who has social anxiety. So I know how hard it is to have a relationship with people and how hard it is to identify women who are female predators. And a lot of guys, they get really nervous when they are out here and a woman pays attention to them. And because they're keyed up, they're not really thinking about who is paying attention to them, why they're paying attention to them, and they're not in the right frame of mind to really assess women. And that's something that, again, when you're an introvert, you don't really know how to do because you're just so scared, but you have to overcome that fear. And you have to take a minute to really take a minute to sit down and think clearly about things because you have to work through your feelings and then start thinking critically about the person who is paying attention to you. And then you have to really study them and listen to what they're saying and to watch what they're doing. And that's something that introverts, they have a hard time doing, but it's something that you have to really start working on. And it's something you have to do because if you don't do it, then this is what's going to happen. What's going to happen is you're going to wind up getting taken advantage of. So a lot of guys, they have to learn how to do eye contact, and eye contact is not something that you do where you're staring at someone. It's somewhere you just make a minute to take a look at the person and let them know you're engaged. And it's something that's eventually over time it's going to become natural to you. And eye contact, again, lets you know that a person is interested, and it lets you know that the person is engaged. And that's the first thing you look for when you're involved with someone. And you also look for the body language, and you also look for the aura and the energy. The aura and the energy, that's really going to tell you something, because people who are really engaged with you and interested in you or have positive energy, that positive energy is going to radiate, and that's what's going to let you know that that person is someone you should deal with, because everybody gives off on energy. And a lot of times with the female predators, they give off this energy that lets you know that there's something wrong. And if your instincts are telling you something is wrong, then you need to put some distance between yourself. And again, a lot of introverts, they don't know about energy and instinctive energy, because you'll get a sense that something is wrong with this person. And this is somebody that you need to avoid. I mean, they may be coming across as real friendly on the outside, but your instincts are going to tell you, okay, I need to avoid this person, and that there's something wrong with them. And that's your spirit telling you, hey, avoid this person. There's something out here. So a lot of guys, they don't know how to deal with their instincts because they are really nervous about things. But your instincts are a major part of helping you in places like the dating scene. So a lot of guys in the scene, they need to really think about that. Yes, a woman may have this great makeup aesthetic, but the internal things that you're feeling and sensing, you need to really take those into consideration when you're engaging someone. And that's something I've learned how to do, is take that minute to really sense someone. And if I'm sensing a certain energy, then I'm going to find a way to disengage this person, because that's telling me that this is a red flag. This person is a predator. Now, other people, they'll have an indifferent energy, and that might be a sign that they're engaged. But usually, people who are engaged, their natural energy is going to come across. But the simp, he doesn't understand about, instinctive senses. Um, Rob, I guess I can do a Q&A in about, I can do it now. I mean, yeah, but I'll do it right after I make this point. But when you are engaging someone, and again, their energy is going to flow. And when you have a connection with someone, you're going to feel that energy. So that's something a lot of guys out here, they have to learn how to do. And again, introverts, it's something that they didn't learn how to do when they were younger, but it's something you can learn to do when you're older. I'm going to go into a Q&A because Rob has some questions and other people have questions. So if you guys want to drop your questions, you can drop your questions right now, and I'll make an effort to answer them. And I will answer your questions about simping in the goth subculture, because, again, this is a subject I've heard the women in the scene talking about it, and I've heard men in the scene. They need to be talked to about this, so it has to be talked about. Why do guys who never suffered anything develop simp syndrome? Well, every guy has a simp phase in their life, and usually guys get the simp phase when they are very young. But a lot of guys, because they've been sheltered, they have not really come out of the simp phase. But usually, once a guy comes out of the simp phase, he becomes a bit more self aware. And once he becomes self aware about his behavior and he learns that this isn't going to work, he then learns not to see women as people, as someone they need to put on a pedestal and worship, but they see them as people just like themselves. And when they see them as equals, they then go out here and start to have healthy relationships. Trex manifest. What have I done to ascend my introversion? Well, the things that I've done to overcome being an introvert is just going out here and living life, facing my fears. And facing your fears is the most important thing in order to overcome introversion. Is that, yes, it's very scary to be out here, but you have to understand that unless you go out here and do the things that you want, you're going to feel more regret if you don't do them. And one of the things that I did to help overcome my introversion was going out here first to write my books, because I wanted to be a writer, and I was afraid of criticism. So I put my books and published them. And I faced that first fear back in 2002 when I published the first ISIS. And facing that fear enabled me to move forward. And the whole thing is, when you're an introvert, you're afraid of people saying bad, but you have to be able to endure things in order to accomplish the things you want to accomplish. Now, other things I've done to overcome being an introvert is going here on YouTube and making videos. That has really helped with my self-confidence, because at one time I couldn't even use my own voice. I was uncomfortable with my own voice, and now I can talk for 2 hours in a live stream. And the whole thing is that you just have to go out there and do things, and you have to take your lumps, you have to take the failures. And again, this is going to build your discipline and your resolve, and it's going to help you become a stronger person, because with the whole foundation of being an introvert is fear, and each fear that you face will help you to become a stronger person. And I have been trying to rise, and again, over the last couple of years, I've gone from doing YouTube videos to doing radio shows, and I recently did the Judge Joe Brown show. So I'm making efforts to move forward, and I'm making efforts to keep trying to overcome things. And that's what I want to see a lot of guys in the scene do, is overcome their introversion by learning that women aren't somebody to be afraid of. They aren't fragile when you criticize them. It won't hurt them when you stand up for yourself, and that you have rights to be in a relationship just like she has a right to be in a relationship. And if she wants to be in a relationship with you, she needs to show you your respect and see you as a person, and not see you as some sort of tool she can use to get stuff out of. Luciano, oh yeah. Well, Friends is a very toxic show. I never watched it, but that Ross was such a simp, it was not even funny, and he got taken advantage of, and Luciano, some guys consider being in a relationship a hardship because they're doing having a relationship on the woman's terms. They're submitting to the woman, and it's overwhelming them because they think they have to do everything that the woman wants, and they think that they don't have to have a say in things. And that's what those guys feel like it's a hardship because they're having a relationship on the woman's terms. They're not demanding anything of themselves, and they're not standing up for themselves, nor do they understand that you have a right to stand up for yourself. And that's what happens to a lot of simps is they think that they have to just do everything she wants and not have to have a say in the relationship themselves. Well, Drex, yeah, it's a good thing that you're coming out of it, but it takes time to do. But with each task you take and each goal you set for yourself, it'll help you become more confident, and it will help you be able to do more. So that was one of the points that I made in the novel Spinsterella. The whole novel of Spinsterella was about overcoming fears and that's how you have a relationship. I wrote it to be a romance based on the goth subculture and the struggles that a lot of goths deal with being introverts and getting close to someone in a relationship as an introvert. So I wrote the entire book so that people can understand that introverts, we deal with a whole host of issues, and it relates to our fears, and it's about us overcoming our fears so we can get closer to each other. And you can pick up Spinsterella on Amazon in paperback and Kindle formats, and you can also get it on Smashwords in the iBookstore. Okay, I did see The Boys, and I'm not a big fan of that comic. It's just too mean for me. Um, I don't read that much Image, Rob. I read a lot of Marvel and DC. I read a couple of other indies, but I don't read too much Image. Okay, you guys have any more questions? Um, I'll be glad to answer them. But again, I hear those horror stories about simps in the scene, and it's something that I'm one of the things I'm glad about seeing is that I see not only the guys in the scene trying to work on this, but I also see the women working on it too. And after I watched Angela Benedict's live stream last week, um, I saw that I had to make this live stream because when you have a female predator giving out STDs, um, yes, that the women are good for coming in and calling that out, but it's up to the guys to educate other guys so that they don't get taken advantage of by female um, predators. And this is something that I want to do is educate guys so that they don't get taken advantage of by these female predators and they wind up getting things like an STD, because that also happens to a lot of guys who get involved with predatory females, is that they wind up, the women who are cheating on them with side dudes, they wind up giving these guys VD. In some cases, they wind up getting HIV. And it's something that we as guys have to come in and talk to other guys so that they won't get caught up in things, because the simping, this is how you get caught up in things, because you just don't know how to identify female predators. You don't know how to identify female predatory behavior. And you're so caught up in your feelings about the attention you're getting that you can't see how this everything is going too fast and how this woman is taking advantage of you. Trex, in the goth subculture, is simping similar to simping in different cultures? Yeah, it's very similar to in any other scene, and goth scene and just regular life. Simping is the same. And again, the whole basis of simping is usually due to guys who don't have good male life skills. It's due to guys not having a father in their life to sit down and talk to them about women. It's due to guys not being taught how to conduct themselves around women. And it's due to guys primarily not understanding that they need to have some self control whenever they engage with a woman, and they need to really have some discipline when they're dealing with women and not come in there with their feelings, but come in there with critical thinking and sitting there and maintaining some self control. Because a simp is a guy, he primarily is emotional and he's in his emotions. And because he's so emotional, it makes him extremely eager. And when a guy is extremely eager, he's not really taking a minute to assess a woman objectively, and that's what leaves him wide open to be a target, because she will offer him either sex or an opportunity at sex, and that's what will get him all keyed up and anxious. And once he gets keyed up and anxious, this is where she gains the leverage. And once she gains the leverage, she then uses that leverage to take control over the relationship. And she has the relationship on her terms. And once she has the relationship on her terms, she has no respect for that man because he's not standing up for himself and asserting himself. And that's why you see women out here going out here to cheat on these guys. And the reason why they cheat on these guys is because they have absolutely, again, no respect for them. So that's simping is everywhere. And again, in the goth subculture, it's one of those things that's happening because, again, when you have large populations of introverted guys, they don't really know what's going on, and they're just so happy to have a woman's attention. They will just take any woman's attention and not really take a minute to assess her or vet her. So that's how those guys get played. And again, I don't want to see guys in the scene taken advantage of like that, especially when I have, information that I put in many of my books on I do for my men's issues out here. And I want the guys out here to benefit from my men's issues books the same way a lot of other guys who are not in the scene have benefited. I mean, guys have picked up my Stop Simpin on Amazon. I'm gonna see if I can get it through. I did get it. Oh, I finally did get it through on in the chat. And Stop Simpin is a book that will really help you understand identifying simp behavior and help you towards working towards becoming a man who can really objectively assess a relationship with women. And it's a book that will really help you understand things about women. So you can pick up Stop Simpin on Amazon. You can pick it up in paperback and Kindle formats. And this book has helped men all over the world understand how the simp paradigm is hurting them. And it's helped transform the lives of so many men out there. And it's really helped so many guys, and they will send me emails telling me about it. I had a guy send me emails about it, and I have guys sending me um, messages on Facebook, and they tell me how this book has improved their lives. And I'm hoping that the book will help improve a lot of guys' lives in the scene, because I don't want to see guys in the scene go through things where they have to deal with female predators and having to deal with things like having to take women to court for destroying their property or holding their property or doing things like that. I mean, I wouldn't want to see goths going on shows like Judge Judy over money that they loaned a woman, or going on shows talking about this woman has all of my New Rock boots and she won't give them back to me. I mean, this happens, or he bought her something and now he can't, he's calling it a loan. And these are the type of situations that simps wind up getting in. And I don't think guys in the scene should get in those situations. They just need help to understand, to identify those situations so they can avoid them entirely because there's a lot of great people in the scene, and I just don't want to see people taken advantage of like that. I don't think I remember that Geraldo episode. I mean, but with the club kids, Rob. But yeah, I know a lot of kids. They come into those type of things. The same thing with the comic book world. There's a lot of simps in the comic book world too, and I just don't like seeing people get caught up like that because that's how they get played. And again, they're thinking that having a girlfriend is important. Luciano has a good question here. How can we combat the over sheltering in modern households? Well, the way you combat the over sheltering is going out for yourself because, excuse me, when you go outside, what that does is it builds your discipline and your resolve. So the more you go out into the world, the more you see that the world, yes, it's a rough place, but then you learn to build a discipline and resolve to survive in the world. Now, the mothers, they think that they're doing something by protecting their kids, but what they're doing is hurting their kids by sheltering them because they have to learn how the world works. They have to learn how the dangers of the world, and they'll have to learn how to survive in the world. What's the difference between a simp and a mangina? Well, a simp is a man who places himself in a submissive position under a woman in order to get her attention and approval. And a mangina is a man who goes out of his way to he just panders to women in the hopes of getting sex out of them. And he thinks that if he agrees with everything that the woman says, that they will make her see him as attractive and makes it where she will see him as someone who he wants to have sex with. For example, with your male feminist, he's a mangina because he thinks if he agrees with all of the positions a woman has, that this woman will see him as attractive and that she will possibly offer him sex. And what he wants to do in both cases is go through the back door for a relationship instead of coming through the front door. But the mangina is far more dangerous than the simp. The simp is just a guy. He thinks that if he goes out here and submits to the woman, he will get an opportunity at possible sex. But the mangina, he creates a covert contract where he thinks all of his agreements with women will lead to him being able to have a relationship with a woman and possibly have sex with him. So he creates a covert contract with women and he bootlicks and brown noses women in the hopes that if he keeps saying yes to her, she will say yes to him. And in most cases, he usually is the more dangerous one because the mangina, he's the guy, he will go out here and participate in the sexual violence, and he's the one who will beat up on women once they reject him or they put him in the friend zone. So he's the guy you really have to look out for. He's usually the guy who hovers around women and brown noses women and bootlicks women. And then when he gets in a place with a woman, he's going to try to make a move on her. And when she rebuffs his advances because he's coming from that position of weakness, he then wants to explode in a spectrum of violent behaviors. Now, the simp, he will get upset about things, but eventually the simp can learn from his behavior. But the mangina usually is a far gone guy, and he is the most dangerous of all of the beta males out there. George asked the question, why do so many cucks and simps use religion to justify their submission? Well, that's just part of the whole cowardly behavior of a simp. And simps, again, use religion to hide behind because they don't have the confidence to go out here and stand up for themselves. And they use the religion as a way to justify their submission. However, the word of God is not about a man going out here and submitting to other men. It is about him submitting to the living God. And it's about him going out here and following the standards of the living God and the word of God is about a man being active and not being passive. So your cucks and your simps, they are passive because they are afraid to go out and stand up for themselves, and they don't have the courage to go out here and be the man they want to be. So they hide behind the religion so that they won't have to go out here and make hard decisions or take constructive action or have the integrity to stand behind their decisions. And that's what a lot of these guys do. They don't have a backbone or stones to stand for themselves, and they try to use the word of God, but that's not what the word of God is all about. The word of God is about a man going out here to do the work of God and having the courage to stand on God. And these guys don't want to stand, they want to fall. Yeah, I got George's question. Yeah, and women do not respect a simp. They just, Travis is right. They don't respect him. And again, they don't respect him because he comes from that position of weakness. And when you come from a position of weakness, then a woman does not see your value as a man. And many of these simps out here, they think if they come from that submissive position, that the woman will look at them from the high position and respect them. But when they look down at them, they have contempt for them. I didn't get to that mini series, Rob. I mean, I haven't found it yet, so I haven't read a lot of comics that much. I mean, sometimes I'll read some online here and there, but I haven't got to that one yet. And eventually, what happens with the simp is because the woman does not respect him, she then learns to hate him. Eventually, again, a lot of simp relationships between a lot of these guys, introverts, they come from the position of pity. And when you come from the position of pity, it's not a good position to come from because your relationship is not going to evolve into respect. When you come from a low position with pity, what happens is pity evolves into contempt. And contempt is where women start showing their disrespect for you. And that disrespect, it starts with verbal attacks. And then it goes from verbal attacks to physical attacks, and then eventually cheating. And then eventually it may lead to violence, such as murder. So you really don't want to come from pity, but because introverts are so scared of standing up for themselves, they don't. They just think pity is a good thing, and they think pity means that pity attention is good attention. So a lot of women, they'll come to a guy like who's an introvert based on pity, where they feel sorry for him. And again, feeling a woman feeling sorry for you is never a good thing, because if a woman feels sorry for you, then that's not a good place for you to be in a relationship. And that's something that shows that your relationship is not going to evolve into anything good at all. So what you want to do is, again, you're working for respect from day one. You want respect from day one, and you have to demand respect from day one. And respect is something that guys who are introverts, they're afraid to stand up and ask for, but it's something you need to insist upon, because without respect, you can't get to love, and without love, you can't get to trust. And a lot of guys, they want that relationship, but again, they don't know how to work towards those things because they're not taught to learn what to look for in a relationship. And this is something that guys have to learn about. And that's one of the things I want to teach on in this live stream. I also teach about it again in my book, Stop Simpin. And that book is going to help a lot of guys in the scene learn what to look for in a relationship and learn how to build a healthy relationship with women in the scene. And that's something I want to see guys go out here and do. Um, okay. Yeah, I'd like to see Extreme Ghostbusters made into a movie. I think that would be a very good follow up. Yeah, Luciano, that's a good point. Yeah, simps have low self confidence. That's another trait of them, and because they haven't really gone through anything, and that's why they have low self confidence, because they haven't really gone through stuff. George, Why do single mothers overprotect their children? And they all overcompensate. They're overcompensating because there's no balance. So the mother is trying to do the work of the mother and the father, and then she just overdoes everything. So that's why single mothers overprotect, and that's why they overdiscipline, because there is no healthy balance between her. In order for a home to be healthy, you need the mother and the father in the home. And when you have the mother and the father in the home, you have balance. So that's what creates balanced children. But when you have a single mother, she overcompensates because she's trying to carry the load of both. Um, but that's what they do. And again, simps, that's another place simps come from. Primarily, they come from single mother households, divorced households, and they come from households where they don't really have a man there to teach male life skills and male survival skills. So because those guys don't get them, that's why they wind up not being able to have healthy relationships with women, because one of the ways a boy learns how to have a relationship with a woman is based on the relationship his mother has with his father. And she sees that relationship modeled for him. And that's what leads to him understanding how to have relationships. But simps, a lot of times, because they learn primarily from women, they don't know how to ironically have relationships with women. And then they approach relationships from a female perspective. So they're approaching a relationship primarily from the perspective of a woman, and they're looking for the woman to cater to them. And again, that's a position of weakness. And when you come from a position of weakness, again, it leads to you being taken advantage of by female predators. And it's those female predators that are the ones who are primarily attracted to simps, because they see a guy who is extremely weak. They see a guy who is really naive, and they see a guy who really isn't seasoned, and they know they can say the right things, dress the right way, put the right makeup on, and this will get their attention. And with that attention, they can then go out of their way to manipulate these guys, take advantage of these guys, and use these guys. And a lot of times, these guys are naive and they don't know anything. And again, they need somebody there to talk to them. And if you have somebody there to talk to you, then you could really avoid a lot of those pitfalls and traps. Now, again, every guy has a simp phase, but when a guy has men around him, he can really navigate the simp phase and it won't burn him too bad. But the whole thing is, a lot of simps who get burnt sometimes, if there's no male guidance, what happens is they wind up making the same mistakes over and over again. And they keep getting involved with female predators over and over again because they don't get the guidance they need from other men. So that's why it's important for men to be talking to guys, especially guys like in the goth subculture, where you have a lot of guys who are introverts. They really need guys to sit down and talk to them, so they don't wind up getting taken advantage of. And they need guys to sit down and get them up on game so that they don't get played and used and abused. And it's something that, again, if you have guys sitting down who have been out here talking to you, then you know, again, how to carry yourself, how to conduct yourself, and you know how to avoid women using you and taking advantage of you. You just learn how to have relationships with people, and you learn how to take time to, again, assess behaviors and identify predators before they can prey on you. And that's something guys have to, in the scene, they have to learn about, because again, simping is not something that's good. It's something that always ends up bad. And again, it can end badly in the way that you lose a lot of money by a woman taking all your money, or you can wind up getting cheated on and possibly wind up with VD, or possibly wind up paying child support for a baby that may or may not possibly be yours, or you may wind up in one of these situations where you become a victim of a violent crime because some of these simps, when they hit the psycho simp mode, they want to go out here and participate in these murders where they kill the girlfriend or they kill themselves because the relationship is over. And again, this is something that if you learn about how to navigate relationships, you can avoid dealing with these things. And another problem with guys who simp in the scene is that they don't really know how to deal with a breakup because introverts, they're very inside themselves and they don't know how to express that hurt or deal with that hurt. And because they don't know how to deal with that hurt, then they turn it inward. And when a lot of times when you're dealing with an introvert, this is what leads to them doing things like committing suicide or making suicide attempts because these men are hurting and they don't know how to deal with that hurt. And they don't understand that other men have been where you've been and they've had to deal with the hurts of a breakup. And these guys don't know how to deal with that because they think that this is the worst thing that's ever happened to them when it's actually just another part of life. And this is something that a lot of young guys out here, they're not used to dealing with, and they don't know how to cope with that. So this is why they go out here and commit suicide because they think that their life is over because the woman that paid attention to them, this is the end of them, but it's not the end of them. It just means that this relationship didn't work and you're actually in a better place because when this woman is not interested in you and she's broken up with you, you can take that time to start focusing on yourself and really take a moment to start working on building yourself up and start working on dealing with other things. And one of the best things you can do for a breakup is focus on a goal you want to pursue because when you focus on a goal you want to pursue, that'll take your mind off the girl that you had all these feelings for, and you can focus that passion on something much better. And when you're focusing on that, then you can go out here and do something really positive. And like Kelator Migtaw saying, you can work on yourself, and that's the best thing you can do because when you work on yourself and improve yourself, then you can start working on the positive energy on yourself and make yourself into somebody great. And that's the thing that's going to, again, attract positive women to you. And then you'll have opportunities at positive relationships, but your relationships really should not be your main priority. And that's the other thing that gets simps in trouble is that they're always focusing on having a girlfriend and not focusing on building up themselves. Because a man who focuses on building up himself, he's going to find women who gravitate toward him and want to have relationships with him. Whereas the simp is looking for women, any woman, to pay attention to him. And his main goal is to have that attention from that woman. And Matt Turner makes a great point that simping, yeah, it's like a drug. And again, the addiction is to the attention of this woman. And you're addicted to this woman to the point where you're willing to sacrifice things that are more important, like your dignity, your self-respect, your self-worth, your intangibles of manhood. These things are not things you sacrifice for a relationship, and they're things you don't have to sacrifice for a relationship. But your simp, he thinks that he has to sacrifice everything to get a woman, but having a woman is not something you need to sacrifice anything for. If anything, the woman and you want to be together, and you don't have to make that much of a sacrifice to be with each other. Things will just flow and they'll just work together. But the simp, he's addicted, and when he gets addicted to the attention, he doesn't think about the boundaries he's crossing. He's not thinking about his own health or safety, and he's not even thinking about the safety of others. He's willing to dump friends, dump family, all to put this woman on a pedestal and worship her. And then when he finds out the woman he has made a god has flaws, or the woman he's made a god of has betrayed him by cheating on him, that's when the simp becomes the psycho simp. And the psycho simp, again, is the man who will go out here and participate in violence like these murder suicides or these mass shootings, or he'll just try to murder the girlfriend or stalk the girlfriend. And that's all because he doesn't really have a healthy understanding of relationships, a healthy understanding of boundaries, and a healthy understanding of how men and women have relationships with each other. So that's something that most of these simps they have a hard time dealing with. And again, this is why guys in the scene need to learn how to stop simping, because this is something that eventually it consumes your life when you get women to pay it, when women are paying attention to you, and instead of you having a healthy and balanced relationship, you're having a dysfunctional one that's codependent, where she has all the power and you are just there to be a slave for her. And that's not a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship is where both of you are sharing and getting closer to each other, and that's the type of relationship you should want. George, why do so many men develop hobbies in the name of simping? Well, they develop those hobbies because they believe this will get them attention of women that they like. So they're not that what they're using those hobbies as is an attachment to get the attention of women. They really don't like the stuff that they're doing. What they like is the opportunity they can use this attachment to get attention from women. So they will go out here and get the expensive clothes, the expensive cars, and stuff like that. Like in the goth scene, you might see this guy buying these designer goth clothes. And again, it's an attachment to draw attention to themselves. And the reason why they want to draw attention to themselves is because these men are insecure and they don't have the confidence to get the attention of women on their own. They don't have confidence in themselves. They're afraid to radiate masculine energy. They're afraid to put effort in themselves. So they put efforts in the attachments because they believe the attachment will get the woman's attention more than themselves. Now, the guys who invest in themselves, they know that they can get the attention of women wearing thrift store clothes. And the reason why they're getting that attention is they have the confidence in themselves and people are looking at them and not at the clothes that they're wearing. So a guy out here who has really strong confidence, he's not going to have a problem getting attention from women or people in general because he has confidence. And this is something the simp is afraid to do, and he thinks he needs to go out here and again buy him some $500 New Rock platform boots to get the attention of, or he's got to go out here and buy some Killstar. But you don't need any of that stuff to get attention. You can get attention by just having a very strong sense of confidence and just feeling strong about yourself. And that's something that the simp can't do because he's used to using these attachments like bodybuilding, cars, sports. He needs these things to feel secure, but all it does is show that he's extremely insecure. So that's why they go out here and they're out here doing these things. And it's just like that George Sodini case. He was out here bodybuilding and he was doing it for the attention of women. He wasn't doing it for himself or his health, but he was doing it because he wanted to get the attention of women. And there are guys out there in the goth scene who do this exact same stuff. Like these tourists who go to different clubs out here in the goth scene. And when you have these tourists and these other types of simps, what they do is they are looking to just get involved with a goth girl for the hopes of a sexual relationship. And this is another form of simping, and it's the worst type of simping because this simp, he fetishizes women in the subculture, and he only wants to go out here and get attention from a woman in the subculture because he thinks that women in the subculture are easier. So this is another type of simp, and again, he's like the worst type because he's almost as bad as the female predators who are in the scene. And this is the worst type of guy to deal with, these tourists and these other guys. They think because they don't really want a relationship with a woman in the scene because she's a great woman. He wants a woman for her goth aesthetic. And oftentimes, this type of simp, he thinks that women in the subculture are easy sexually because he has heard of all of these stereotypes about the goth subculture as women. But what he doesn't know is that many of the women in the goth subculture have a high moral position. And again, they really frown upon this whole fetishizing of women in the goth subculture, and they frown on it because you're taking a person and boiling them down into a sexual fetish and a sexual fantasy, and you're not seeing them as a person. And that's what any guy in the scene wants to do, is he wants to see the women in the scene as a person. And that's what simps don't do. Simps boil women down to stereotypes, they boil them down to looks, they boil them down to aesthetics. And every woman should be judged by the content of her character and the actions that she takes, because it's the actions of her character that a man should be assessing. And if that's what leads to great relationships in the scene, and it's something that guys have to learn how to do, because again, when you have introverts, they come in from the scene of simping. They come in simping because they're afraid to go out here and take that moment to have a help to stand up for themselves so they can ask for what they want in a relationship. So they think they have to do it on her terms. But in actuality, you have to take the lead and ask for what you want and try to have a relationship on your terms. Trex, there's a lot of men claiming to be alphas. In that, is that something that's prevalent in the goth scene? No, I don't see a lot of guys talking about how alpha they are in the goth scene. Usually, most guys aren't trying to talk about being so-called alpha in the scene, from what I've seen. And guys are just guys over there. But a lot of guys, from what I've heard, there's a lot of simping going on, and they just need a little help in understanding the basic male life skills as related to going out here and having relationships with women. So the guys out here, that's why I made this live stream, because I want to help the guys who don't know, because I don't want to see those guys getting taken advantage of by female predators. And I want to be able to educate guys so that they can go out here and have a great relationship with many of the great ladies I have seen in the scene as I've done my research for the Spinsterella trilogy, and as I continue, making videos about the scene. And I talk to different people in the comment sections and in the chats, and even with emails, I still talk to a lot of people in the scene. And I've actually had people, they come looking for the goth live streams. So I wanted to do this one because it's very important to me. And as an expert who has written books on simping, I want to be able to help guys learn um, to the things that they need to do to avoid, again, those female predators, and how to connect with great women in the scene. Because from what I've seen, relationships in the goth subculture, they're some of the best relationships overall. And people, when they do get together, they stay together for years and even decades. I mean, people I've seen have been married for 20, 25 years, and they're still in love with each other. I've seen people being together for 10, 15 years. So a lot of the unions in the scene, when people have healthy ones, they have great ones. And I want to see more guys going out here and having great relationships with the great girls in the scene, and making efforts to avoid these female predators, because again, life is too short to be out here with a female predator. And when there are just so many great women out there, and all you have to do to get involved with one of those great ladies is take that moment to put in that work in yourself, go out here and face these fears you have about being an introvert, face these fears you have of being rejected, face these fears of failure. Because a lot of guys, when they get involved with these female predators, the reason why that's happening is not only due to their fear of Women, it is also due to their fear of failure. A lot of these guys, they are going for the easy relationships because the woman is saying yes. And what there's not understanding is that oftentimes it takes a lot of no's to get to a yes. And again, you have to think about an easy yes is not really worth it because you have to wonder what she's saying yes to and why she's saying yes. When if she's saying yes too soon, it's often an indicator to this relationship being one where you're going to get the tables turned on you. And this happens to a lot of guys who get involved with female predators is they go for the women who they believe are easy because they don't want to take rejection. And they don't understand that rejection is just a part of dating and relationships. And it's something you have to really deal with. And you have to get used to people saying no in order to get to yes. And you have to build up a thick skin in order to take those no's before you get that genuine yes. Luciano asks, have you noticed that the dating scene is rigged against men who are marginalized, oppressed classes? Do women love men who actually have been through stuff? Yeah, they do love men who have been through stuff. And the dating scene, I don't think is rigged. I just think that guys who are in groups who are marginalized, they have to just have the confidence to go out there. And yeah, you've been through stuff, but you can't let stuff affect you to the point where you're making yourself bitter. And you will find women that love you, but you have to really put your stuff in perspective because what will happen to a lot of guys is they get caught up in this victimization. And because they get caught up in this victimization, they always think about the bad that's happened to them. And that keeps them from having a relationship with the woman who wants to love them. So you have to really stop being a victim. And yes, these you've been through these hard times, but then you have to think about letting those traumas that you had from those hard times go, because there's a better possible future for you with this woman who wants to get close to you. And if you keep letting these traumas get to you, you're going to build up an emotional wall, and it's that emotional wall that's going to keep you from getting closer to this woman. So I'm going to get ready to wrap up this stream in a couple of minutes. If you have any more questions, I'll be glad to answer them in the next 5 minutes or so. But I'm going to get ready to wrap things up in a minute or so, 4 or 5 minutes from now. Um, but I see this simping in the goth subculture, and it's again something that I want to help guys deal with, and I want to help guys understand about, because you never want to come from a submissive position, because when you come from a submissive position with women, they don't respect you and they don't see you as someone they should regard in a relationship as a partner. They see you as someone beneath them, and when women see you as somebody beneath them, that's not a place you want to be, because that's really going to set you up for being cheated on, and it's going to set you up for being completely seen as a complete joke. Because what happens to simps in a lot of cases, again, they get used for their money, they get used to buy clothes, they get used to pay for rent on homes, they get used in the worst way. And in some cases they get used in extreme cases where they're paying for child support, where they're for children that aren't theirs, and it's really bad. What are my thoughts on introverts responding to other social entities with defiance? That's never a good thing. An introvert has to understand that you can't go into entities defying them. You have to find a way to treat them with respect. Why do men have to prove that they're adults? Usually that's because the man has to show that he can be a protector and a provider. So, Luciano, that's why men go out of their way to try to prove their manhood, because they want to be they want to show how responsible they are. Because when you show how you are responsible by having your own place, your own job, and being able to take care of yourself and pay your own bills, that makes you attractive to people, and it shows that you're a responsible person. Moreover, women see a man who can do these things as someone who can be a protector and provider for them, And that's why a man has to prove himself, and that's why goes out of his way to do that. Do I believe that there are female simps? Yes, there are female simps out there, and they often get taken advantage of by predatory guys out there. Now, simps are primarily men, but there are some women out there who try to lead with their wallet, and usually it ends very disappointing because examples of this are these women with the college degrees and the big job who have the thug in their house who is sitting there playing Xbox all day. That's a simp because this guy is not bringing anything to the table as a man, and this woman is providing resources for him, and he's not doing anything. That's a female simp right there. Now, there are usually it's guys who are simping, but women simp too, and they simp because they want to get this man, and they think if they can help this man come up, he will be a man. But what often happens is the woman doesn't respect that man because, again, he is coming from a position of weakness, and a man who comes from a position of weakness, a woman just will not respect because he's weak. And him being in the house and she has to take care of him puts him in the position of a child. And when a man is in the position of a child, women just don't respect that man. They don't see him on the same level as a man, and they don't regard him on the same level as a man. So when they look at that guy, they see somebody, yes, they're attracted to him sexually, but they don't see him as a man that they take seriously. That's what happens to the female simp, and their relationships usually end on a bad note, just like the men who simp out here. Because again, without respect, you can't get to love, and without love, you can't get to trust. Why is dating for men always about money and consumerism, but why is it always about pleasing and romantic virtue? Well, for men, it became about that due to Madison Avenue in Hollywood, and you have to break out of the Madison Avenue and Hollywood mindset. So it's always about money and consumerism because the hypergamous nature, women want men with resources. They want them to impress them with resources. But once you break out of the Madison Avenue and Hollywood mindset, you start to see that it's not about money and consumerism or pleasing the woman, and it's about two people who have things in common and people who have similar interests wanting to get together. So you have to break away from the Madison Avenue and Hollywood mindset in order to have a healthy relationship with a woman. I'm going to get ready to wrap up today's stream. I want to thank everyone for being here for today's stream. I'm going to do another Goth live stream soon, and I hope you'll be there. But until then, I hope you pick up the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, Spinsterella, Spellbound, and the legendary Mad Matilda, great black goth fiction. And I hope you also go out of your way to pick up the books of the SJS Direct 2019 catalog, John Haynes' Dark Succubus, Isis, All That Glitters, and Esteem Goddess of. All of these books are available on Amazon. And you can pick them up. Again, Legendary Mad Matilda, Spellbound, and Spinsterella. And you can pick up the books of the 2019 catalog, John Haynes' Dark Succubus, Isis, All That Glitters, and Esteem Goddess of. You can pick up all of these books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle formats. I really appreciate that because it helps me pay the bills. And if you guys could donate to my Patreon, I would really appreciate that. And I want to thank everybody for coming to the stream. And I hope to have another stream next Wednesday. Again, I thank you all for coming to this stream. And I'm hoping guys in the scene have learned something about why they shouldn't simp in the goth subculture.